Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's weekly training webinar for all the members out there of Tax Sale Support. We're glad to have you join us. I'm Ferre. I'm here with Steve Swenson.
Yeah, exactly. Glad to be here.
We always cover different topics, so if you have anything you'd like us to cover, let us know. You know, we're happy to try to answer specific questions when people have them. For these weekly webinars. We also always record these. I'm just thinking about any other news or announcements. You know, I know there's lists and stuff coming up, but we might cover that maybe, I guess, when we're going live.
Yeah, you know, one thing you just said, we record these. All of these have been updated on the website. So as of last week, so you can go onto the website and we have all of those recorded and updated and archived there. So if you missed a webinar, missed a week, interested in a topic, you're bound to find about every kind of topic in tax sale investing in there.
Yeah, we do cover. We do definitely cover a lot. So we're going to talk about over-the-counter investing tonight. We're going to talk about first. You know, we'll begin with talking about some of the things that you need to know about it, and this goes for both tax liens or for tax deeds. It's really a strategy that is a good one for a lot of people. You know, it makes sense. I don't know if it's a perfect fit for everybody, but it's definitely one worth looking into if you're looking for ways to get started. And so once we do that, we will take some time to look at some lists and some different live examples. We'll look at different over-the-counter liens and deeds that are available and different opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, we've essentially spent the last 10 years getting the tax sale list ourselves. So, you know, we don't use any type of service. We just have, you know, databases of links and connections set up to be able to get these tax sale lists. And so, you know, as far as the tax sale lists, they're always going to be updated because we're going to be talking about over-the-counter lists. And there's really, I don't know of a better resource with more over-the-counter list available than our members.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think there's anybody that I don't know that there are really a lot of companies out there that really that do it. And so let's talk about over-the-counter investing a little bit. Let's talk about a little bit related to what it is. You know, some of you might already know, or you might feel like you're pros on it. But there's always new stuff to learn about things. So let's just bring anybody that doesn't know up to speed. If we're talking about over-the-counter, when we're talking about tax liens and deeds, we're essentially talking about those that are available directly from the county, meaning that we're not buying them from an auction or a tax sale or something. We're basically buying them from the county, either through a website or something like that. They're, you know, we're paying the county directly for them. And the reason for that is because they were basically offered at a sale already, but they weren't purchased.
Yeah, exactly. That's what sets an over-the-counter, you know, investment apart from another investment, is that it's already been offered for sale once, maybe even multiple times, and hasn't sold up to that point. And that could be for a number of reasons. That could be because the delinquent taxes are more than the property's worth. That could be for, you know, there was more property than investors at the auction. So there's a lot of different reasons why that can happen. But essentially what happens if you know, they have a list of 100 properties and 50 of them sell, well, they still have 50 other properties. And so what a lot of counties do is they make those properties available to be purchased over the counter after the sale.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if it's tax liens that we're dealing with, then that's a little bit easier for the county, because really all they do is just kind of put them back on their books and make them available, but they don't necessarily have to do a lot. With deeds, it's a little bit different, because they actually have to deed when they aren't purchased at the auction, they're deeded over to the county, and the county becomes the new owner of the land, essentially, or the land becomes county held.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and what the county decides to do with the property is can kind of be dependent upon the county and the state laws. Some counties directly put them onto the books. Some counties will be able to use the property or then offer it for sale. And so when we're talking about tax and certificates, these are essentially tax liens that were left over after the sale, and same with tax deeds. And so these properties, like Shade said, have been foreclosed on. And essentially, when you're buying an over-the-counter tax deed, you're buying the property. When you're purchasing over-the-counter tax lien, you're buying that tax lien already into the redemption period.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, there are a lot of advantages. We'll talk about the specific ones here with each one. In fact, if you're talking about over-the-counter investing, really, it's something that you can utilize with all three of the property enforcement methods here. We've got listed, tax liens, tax deeds, or redemption deeds. Like for instance with Texas, and their struck off lists. You can do over-the-counter investing with any of these. And so basically, what we're saying here is that if you don't want to participate in an auction, there are still ways to buy, and there are some advantages associated with it. There's benefits, drawbacks. In terms of reasons why liens or deeds don't sell at auction, there can really be so many different reasons for that. And is just a casual investor, participating in the sale, sometimes it's hard to know. It's a little bit easier to pick that apart if you attend a live sale, and you can kind of see there in person what sells versus what doesn't, who's there at the auction. But there can be so many different reasons for it. Sometimes counties have just tons more stuff available than they have interest or people showing up at the auction to buy.
Yeah, I would say that probably 80% of the properties that go over the counter list, or at least if there's leftover properties, that's generally the reason why. Now, of course, there's going to be those junk properties that nobody wants to buy.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to those junk properties, many times you're going to find all different types of properties going to the over-the-counter sale. When it comes to over-the-counter properties, we've seen every type of property you can imagine, from just regular building lots to large chunks of raw land, even to structured properties, homes, mobile homes, commercial properties, things like that on the over-the-counter list. So, just because it's on the over-the-counter list doesn't mean that it's a bad property. There's lots of reasons why it may not have sold. Primary being that there probably wasn't enough people at the auction to buy all the property that was available.
Yeah. Well, the concern obviously is, if people didn't buy the liens or the deeds at the auction, is it because there was something wrong with it? And that's the concern you have. It's what you want to avoid, is picking out a bad piece of property. And so what you essentially have to do with your due diligence is figure out what the property is, so that you can ensure that it's not a bad property. But like Steve was saying, there's so many different reasons why a property may not get a bid, and it can come down to weird things sometimes, like bidder default. The winning bidder walking away. Sometimes they'll say that on the auction results as you're looking through, and you'll see that it happens quite a bit, where they have winning bidders walking away from the sale. So they basically kind of lose that opportunity to sell it. It could be related to like a mistake or something in the original, foreclosure or offering or something. If there's anything like that, they'll hold off, or they'll postpone the sale on it.
Yeah, anything like that, could easily be held. If somebody doesn't pay, that can happen. And usually when that does happen, they essentially bar you from participating in the auction again. So, when it comes to bidding on property and then not paying for it, it's definitely something we don't recommend. I mean, unless there was some, drastic reason that happened during the auction when you decided not to. But usually up to that point, you'll have known exactly what you're willing to pay for the property.
Yeah, and also there's a difference between when we're talking about tax liens and tax deeds, because of the nature of the foreclosure that's taking place with the tax deed and the loss of the property. With tax liens, you don't see a sudden surge to try to redeem them prior to a tax lien being issued, because nobody's at risk of losing anything. And the same is true when they're not sold at auction. They go back on the books. A lot of counties are perfectly set up to sell their over-the-counter inventory, and that's how they operate. They know that they're going to sell. Anything they don't sell at the auction, they're going to sell, online through their inventory now, because because they've got a good setup there. So it's kind of a part of how a lot of them operate. A lot of them count on their over-the-counter selling abilities in order to do that. But it's not even available everywhere if you think about it. There's some places that don't.
Yeah, well, I was just going to kind of piggyback off of that. You know, when you're talking about systems like Florida, for example, you know, there's a lot of competition going to those areas, but there's other areas in the country like Nebraska, for example, or some of these other states that really don't have many investors contacting them after the sell at all, except for maybe just a couple of local investors. And so in some of those type of counties where it may take a little bit more work, there's still good opportunities in different areas in the country. That's one of the things about tax sale investing. And if we even go look through the over-the-counters available, you know, there's probably 25 different counties or states that offer some type of over-the-counter investing. So there's a lot of different opportunity out there, not only in some of the big markets like Florida, but also in smaller markets that maybe there's not as many investors even looking in that area. And when you're looking at the investment is an investment, you know, dollar for dollar, these could still be great investments, even if it's a tax lien in Nebraska that's making you 14% or, you know, something like that.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that we're seeing is more and more counties basically, or I guess states setting up laws in a way so that counties can foreclose on some of their the inventory that they have over-the-counter, you know, liens they have, or some of their properties. And what we're finding is just that they're becoming a little bit more capitalist minded, you know, in a way. You know, I mean, it's a huge source of income for them, and so they're starting to sell these properties off with a little bit more, you know, I think better. They're better at selling them now than they used to be, and we're seeing some that are taking their huge selections of over-the-counter stuff or stuff that is just been sitting there, and they're foreclosing on some of them that have never foreclosed on people before, are foreclosing on them, and are selling off that stuff for cheap just to get new owners in it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, we can even look at Arizona, for example, as a tax lien state, but those tax liens that the county holds and that aren't, you know, purchased, they're turning around and they're offering up as deeds now. Colorado's doing it. Mississippi does it. South Carolina is starting to do it. And so there's all of these different states that are, you know, really giving us new opportunities to try buying these deeds without having to buy the tax and certificate and go through the foreclosure ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if we're buying a tax lien in Arizona, we'd have to spend the money to go through the foreclosure. We can purchase these properties in some of these over-the-counter sales or resales where you can buy them for literally a lot cheaper without having to pay to go through the foreclosure because it's already been done.
Yeah. Which, by the way, if when it comes to the investing, when you buy liens, you should be buying liens with the intention for it to redeem. You know, if your objective is to get property, you don't want to go through liens to do that. You know, it's so much easier just to pick, you know, to pick deeds to begin with, so that you don't have to deal with that process. You know, it's such a high percentage of liens end up redeeming anyway. That if it's property you're after, then we're going to tell you to go after the over-the-counter. But when it comes to the liens and we're looking at the property, you know, we're going to get a chance to talk about that a little bit in some of the benefits, drawbacks. We get into some of the specifics here with liens and deeds, but there's also a ton of terms that are used to describe exactly what we're talking about here. And there's probably even more than what we have listed here. But this covers a lot of the ones that we've seen, I think, over the years, and every place seems to be a little bit different.
Yeah, exactly. You know, tax forfeited land, you'll see that a lot. County owned assignment purchasing, you know, OTC or over the counter. And so there's a lot of different terms, county held, that'll be used out there to describe these tax liens and deeds that didn't get sold at the auction that are available over the counter.
Yeah. In fact, that is one of the things that you have to try to learn in the beginning is what the terminology is for a specific county and basically how they operate. Now, let's talk for a minute. Let's get a little bit specific about tax liens, because investing over the counter with tax liens is different from tax deeds in a lot of ways. I think there are a lot of great opportunities with liens. If we were to talk about specifically, you know, why buy tax liens over the counter? Well, one big reason is that it is a way to automatically earn the maximum interest rate return allowed in that specific state. That reason alone would be a reason to make it worth investing. I mean, when you're buying liens, you're basically buying for the interest rate return.
Yeah.
And so the ability to get the maximum interest rate return, which in a lot of these places is going to be as high as 18% or 17 or, you know, higher in some places. So it's a significant rate of return that you can earn just by buying over the counter, and you automatically get that. But I think it's probably the safest, easiest way to earn returns of 12 to 24% safely.
Yeah, I think that's the #1 benefit of buying tax liens over the counter, because you're not going to be bidding down that interest rate, which can sometimes get very competitive, especially on the properties that look more sexy or appealing. You know, the bidding can get crazy, and why bid a property down to 4 or 5%, which is still a good return, when you can make 18% or 16%. And so, you know, especially when you're looking at it from an investment standpoint, if you're investing $1,000 into a you know, a fancy property that, you know, you're making 4% return on, or you're investing $1,000 into a property that has value and use but isn't as fancy, you know, and you're making 18%, you're going to be making more money. And so you're going to look at it from an investment standpoint, especially when it comes to tax and certificates, because the chances of you foreclosing on that property is, you know, a 5% chance.
Yeah.
And so, you know, chances are you're going to get your money back. There's no need to, you know, bid down that interest rate in buying in competitive auctions.
Yeah, I think that that's probably one of the biggest things about it is you don't have to deal with the auction. You know, there are a lot of people that don't want to have to deal with auctions, and so buying over the counter is really a good way for them to do it. It's a more relaxed way to do it anyway, because you can basically go through a list and pick out what you want, and the due diligence on it is pretty simple. And so, you know, there are really only a few things that that we're looking for when it comes to liens that we'll talk about here in just a second. The elapsed time into the redemption period is also something that's important to remember. That the redemption period for a tax lien begins on the date of the auction, when it's first, you know, when it's offered, whether it sells or not. You know, so it doesn't. If it doesn't sell, that date is still going. So when you buy that lien, you know, it has time that is, you know, into the redemption period. It's not starting the redemption period at the time that you buy it. So it's possible to buy them with different durations of time left on the redemption period.
Yeah, I think that's another one of the big benefits of it, because you can shorten the amount of time before you're guaranteed to get your money back. So if you're investing in a tax lien in Florida or somewhere that's, you know, a year old, well, you're not going to have to wait 2 years before you can get your money back and start the foreclosure. You're only going to need to wait 1 year. And so it's a way to shorten that investment duration. So instead of waiting 3 years, maybe you're only waiting a year and a half, because you're buying tax liens been on the books for a year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah, it puts you in a little bit more control, because you're already whittling down some of that time. And
you're buying it near the end, you know, closer to the end of the redemption period, which is going to increase the chances of the property owners going to pay it back before going to foreclosure. But it also shortens that period down. And then if you do go to foreclosure, as long as you purchase a good tax and certificate, and that does happen, you know, that's a home run. I mean, if you can foreclose on a tax, you know, we talk about, you know, looking at it to redeem, because that's what's most likely going to happen. But if you purchase a good tax lien and you acquire it through foreclosure, usually you've gotten that property for less than 5 cents, 5% of the property's value.
Yeah, at least, you know, if you've done everything correctly, that should be about, you know,
5, 10, you know, I mean, you're still buying it at pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, it should be an excellent deal. What types of property do we target with over-the-counter tax lien investing? That's also something that varies. You know, for instance, we target property a little bit differently with deeds than we do with liens, and that's because basically, when you're dealing with liens, again, you're buying so that these you're buying with the intention that these will redeem. You're trying to pick out tax liens that are against properties that have significant use and value, so that people want to retain them. They make sure they find some way to pay off the bill. And the more use and value it has, the more likely it is, you know, that it's going to redeem. So when it comes to over-the-counter liens, we like stuff against single-family homes, commercial properties, residential. I mean, anything that has significant value and use to us is great. Large plots of land, you know, I mean, you name it, if it has value, you know, then we're willing to buy liens against it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't care if it's a you know, a quarter acre building lot, you know, valued at 10 grand. If we're buying a lien on it for $300,
Yeah.
you know, it makes sense. So it doesn't really matter exactly what the property is. It's just the type of properties we avoid. And that really comes down to, you know, property that has no value and no use. So, you know, landlocked property, property that, you know, has irregular building lots or is unbuildable, unusable, you know, low value, anything like that, we're going to completely avoid. But anything that has use and value is something that we'll potentially target as an investment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, really, and it's that simple. I mean, it doesn't have to be very complicated. You know, we keep it really simple outside of making sure that the property has significant value. And when we're talking about the lien amount, I mean, lien amounts are normally a fraction of what the property's worth. You know, if you're seeing a lien amount that is more than 2 or 3% of the property's estimated value, then there might be something wrong. You might be looking at multiple years worth of taxes, because generally a single year's worth of taxes is only so much. So as long as the property has value and that bid to value ratio seems like it's within reason, the only other thing that we want to check on is what we call the tax lien roll up, and especially important with over the counter liens, because you have liens that are still on the books, right? You go to buy those liens, and the roll up basically represents the amount that the lien holder would need to pay in order to foreclose on the property. And to help you make more sense of that, tax liens all pretty much redeem. You know, and if they don't redeem, then the lien holder's recourse is to try to foreclose on the property. But the thing about tax liens also is that they prevent the transfer of ownership. So if there is a property that has tax liens that exist against it, you know, that are still open, you know, in other words, unredeemed tax liens against the property, then those tax liens have to be paid off before you can transfer ownership. It's really as simple as that. And so if you want to acquire the property, then you have to basically pay that off, and that's what we mean by the roll-up. You have to pay that in order to foreclose on the property, so it changes the numbers of the investment. You want to make sure you're aware of what those numbers are.
Yeah, other than junk land, the tax lien roll-up is going to be your number one risk in tax lien investing. And you know, the roll-up is just all of those other delinquent years of taxes. So if we're looking at a property that has 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years worth of delinquent tax liens on it, that's obviously a red flag. Why hasn't somebody foreclosed on the property to begin with? But in addition with that, all of those delinquent taxes may add up to an amount that costs more than it's worth it to foreclose on the property. So, you know, if you're looking at a $10,000 building lot and, you know, you're buying a tax lien on it that's $400 and everything looks good, but you look into it and it has 10 other tax liens on it that roll up to $5,000 or $6,000. Well, it's not going to make sense to buy that tax lien certificate, even though it's only $400 against the $10,000, looks okay. When you really take into account, it's $5,000 or $6,000. And so, you know, other than buying junk land, this is going to be the number one thing that you're going to want to research. And this is all information that we can get through the county tax collector.
Yeah, in fact, you know, let's take a look here. I'll kind of show you here. And this is actually what's great is we have members all the time that will send us, send us emails and say, hey, I was thinking about buying this. What do you think? And so this is one that one of the members sent to me to say, hey, you know, thinking about buying this. What do you think? And basically, you know, this is what I looked at and told them, because it's probably still a good investment, but you have to go into it with your eyes, you know, wide open here as to what, you know, exactly what it is. You know, it's 33 acres of land valued at $143,000. You know, so it's a good, you know, part of land there. It's non-agricultural acreage, but what you also need to pay attention to, though, is the face amount of this lien is about $4,900, right? Seems like a reasonable amount for a lien when you compare it to a $150,000 piece of property. But we're also looking, and it has let me jump back here. It has outstanding certificates for several years. So if we were to look at this, you can see here that we know that these are open for from 2009 up and through 2015, and each one of them is basically growing in interest. Okay, so because the lien holder still hasn't been redeemed yet, so they're still accruing interest. Each one of these 18%. For these ones 14.75 for the one in 2010, but they're all accruing interest there. So essentially, if you want to foreclose on this property, then you've got, let's say just 5,000 here to even it out here times 7 years. What is it, like 35,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, the one thing you'd have to look at with this property is, okay, you've got $5,000 initially, but there's $35,000 worth of roll up on this tax lien in order to foreclose on it. So your total investment into this is actually going to be $40,000 if you were to need to foreclose on it. Now, it might still be well worth that area. It's in Florida, and it's a big chunk of land.
Yeah, and you do have investors that, from 2009 up until 2013, all of those liens are held by investors. We can see underneath the type, it's county held, and the buyer is 999, that's county. But you can see 2013, 12, 11, 10, 9 were purchased by investors making between 18%, and one made 14.75. So in 2010, that one sold at the auction, and the rest of them were purchased over the counter. So it's possible one of those other investors could go ahead and pay off that lien amount and foreclose on the property, but the longer you continue to wait, or
the higher the amount gets, and the more unlikely it becomes that that's going to happen. And so, it's important when you go into the lien, that you're looking at that kind of a thing, because really, it makes all the difference. If you were to look at this and it doesn't have really any kind of a roll up, then that's great, because basically means that foreclosing on it is not going to cost a ton of money. If it's got a limited amount of roll up, that's great. It's not going to affect it, but as that roll up increases the amount, it dramatically affects the investment. And you also have to consider what you have available to work with.
Yeah.
If you don't have 40,000, that you could put into it, then you probably don't want to buy a lien like this.
Yeah, if you had the money to put into it, chances are it would probably go to the tax deed auction and either, and most likely sell at a tax deed sale, because there's be about $100,000 worth of capital.
It would redeem for these guys even if you didn't buy it.
Yeah.
Well, or if you bought it,
when you go to buy it, you're going to have to pay off all the others lien holders, and so essentially for 6 months while it goes through foreclosure, you're going to be making 18% on the the 40,000. But that's a ton of money for that you're putting into an investment. So if you don't want to do a ton of deals and you want to get your money out, a property like that may be
it could be a good investment to pursue.
But the only reason it is worth it is because the assessed value is high. And even with that, I would research this property a little bit similar to as I would a tax deed, because the amount of money I'm putting into it.
Yeah, if
I make sure the value is worth 150, the county hasn't over assessed it, different things like that, then I would put more research into it because of the amount I'm putting into it versus just buying a $1,000 tax lien on a $50,000 home or something.
Yeah, which you could just as easily probably pick out one against a home that's going to have naturally a higher value of maybe a couple $100,000. Although, I would love to acquire, a big chunk of land like that. The pricing is, really what counts, and the only thing you can really rely on. I don't know if anybody has any questions about how multiple liens work. I know sometimes that's something that gets a little bit foggy for people when they're trying to understand the process here, but I think the easiest or most simple way to explain it is that tax lien sales are an annual sale. They're not something that counties do every month. They do it every year, and every lien that basically is sold has the same rights and the same redemption period. So, in other words, when counties hold these annual tax sales and they sell off liens, you can have multiple liens against a property. Meaning that you can, generally, if you are the buyer that buys this lien number 1 at the auction, the county will oftentimes contact you if there's a lien number 2 that comes up. And the reason they do that is because they know that if you want to foreclose on the property eventually, if it doesn't redeem, that you're going to have to pay those off anyway. So it's kind of a way to do it ahead of time, in a way. But if you don't buy them, certainly you could have 4 different lien holders for each one of these. That buy it. The main point is that after 2 years from the date of the sale, on each one of these years, the lien has foreclosure rights. Right. And so really the only thing that prevents them is when that redemption period comes to an end. And some people jump on the chance to as soon as their time's up, they jump on it, and some lien holders don't, and they sit on it. And so it's really just a matter of, once eligible, who pursues foreclosure first.
Yeah, exactly. So if year 3 and year 4 are both eligible, it's essentially first come, first serve.
Yeah. And just a couple of the states here, and we've got a lot more than that. We were just talking about Nebraska a second ago, and who else we're talking about here? We've got Colorado, Arizona. Can you think of any other good lien states here offhand?
Oh, we have on the website. A couple more we're adding. Alabama, has thousands of liens.
Yeah, let's talk for a minute about over-the-counter deeds before we get into the live part of this. If we were to simply talk about life cycle of a deed, I think you kind of already understand it. The deeds offered to the auction, the unsold deeds are basically transferred into the ownership of the county. They become county-held land, and the county can sells them basically for what's owed in taxes and fees. One thing that's interesting is if a state or a county doesn't offer over-the-counter deeds, which some don't, you can find more over-the-counter liens out there, but there are some that won't offer over-the-counter deeds, and that's because what they do is they have multiple resales, and they keep offering it through multiple resales, and if it doesn't sell through multiple resales, eventually they will sell it at an auction with some kind of a flat minimum bid amount.
Yeah, we've seen that in California, Michigan, other different states, where essentially after they have offered those properties, they'll essentially have a resale. And so when we're looking at those type of auctions, if it's an online auction, even if it's an auction, I'm still kind of looking at it like an over-the-counter, just because of we're paying less than taxes owed.
Yeah, once they're willing to take less than taxes owed, I think it is like an over-the-counter, because even if it's in an auction environment, but you're able to get such a good bid to value ratio on it if you can acquire it, that it just makes so much sense. If we're talking about some of the advantages, flat out, it is the cheapest way to buy property, period. There's not anything that comes close to this, I guarantee it. It's also a way to purchase these properties for the absolute minimum possible price. Okay, you can't get any lower than the minimum owed in taxes and fees.
Yeah, exactly. Even if that's added up over a few years, it's still usually going to be a small portion of the property's value. So it could range anywhere from 5% up to 15% of the property's value, depending on the area. But usually you're looking at picking these properties up for hugely discounted prices.
Yeah, sometimes when we're looking over the counter deeds, we see bid to value ratios of 2 or 3%, which is it's almost absurd. When you have a bid to value ratio that is 2 or 3% of the property's value, it's insulting. But it really, though, is the best opportunity you're going to find, and the only one that's like it anywhere. Again, we look for a little bit different kinds of property here because, again, it's not all about improvements. Improvements can be great here, but we're also highly interested here in raw land because that's what a lot of these types of properties are that end up getting lost in the auctions. But if you've got the capital, though, you can do lots of different types of property. It just takes a little bit more due diligence.
Yeah. Homes, you can buy homes in many different states with over-the-counters. There's plenty of homes available. The only thing is you're going to need to either go out there and visit them in person or set up a power team to really evaluate.
Yeah, you've got to get a current estimation of its condition and what might be
have the capital set aside to take care of the repairs as well.
Yeah, take care of the repairs, be able to sit on any kind of holding costs that you're going to have with the property over that time.
Title. There's and but also, you know, the payoff can be huge on those properties as well.
Yeah.
Versus making $5,000 on or $10,000 on a deal, you could make $30,000 or $40,000 on a deal.
Yeah. You can.
But you know, it is going to take more work. And so when we're talking with investors who are especially just getting started, that's the reason we always talk about land, is because it's going to, you know, you're going to have a lot better chance of not making a mistake by investing in land.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot easier to avoid a lot of the pitfalls, because the biggest mistake that people can make when it comes to property improvements is buying on the assumption that something is there, or that the condition is what they think it is, to find out that it's something different than that. And you know, that's where the risk comes in, because you know, that there can be a lot of cost associated with that. And with raw land, we just don't have that same concern. So it's easier to buy from for an out-of-state, you know, for an out-of-state investor.
Yeah, there's only 2 times that we've purchased property, you know, with improvements sight unseen, and you know, that happened to be a quick auction that we just found out about, and they were just trailers, and where the land was worth more, so we didn't really care about how much the trailer was, because we were,
or if it was even there.
Yeah, because we were buying the properties for $200 or $300 each. So in that kind of scenario, you know, it was all right, at least from our point of a risk, to spend the $200 or $300 to get the property without actually viewing the trailers.
Right. The financial risk was low enough that
and the property, the land itself, was worth, you know, had such a high value that even if we had to have somebody come junk the trailer, it was still going to be a good investment.
Yeah. Oh, also, guys, just by the way, but while we're thinking about it here, just something to mention here: if you're looking at buying any of the over-the-counter deeds in Arkansas, we should probably just mention this. The special improvement districts are something you want to check up on before you buy, because they can mean anything from well, in some places, they're kind of like an additional government entity that just provides for a little bit nicer neighborhood and some additional features. It can go from that level all the way up to, you know, you buy property here and you automatically become part of our Gold Golf membership program that's $500 a month. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are aware of what the SID, or special improvement districts, they've been around in Arkansas for a long time, and they work pretty well. You know, just because in some of these states, the property taxes that come into the county are really not enough to cover, you know, a lot of stuff. You know, it pretty much, you know, covers the bare minimums there. And so people that want to live in nicer communities, it's kind of like having an HOA in a way. You know, they just have a little bit different requirements in the community. You know, you basically still pay a property tax, but you also have this this special improvement district fee, you know, that you have to pay every year. And it's not generally that hard to find out what it is beforehand. But if you're looking at any property to buy, and you see something related to, you know, any kind of an SID, or you know, any kind of improvement district there, you're going to want to check on that kind of stuff before you buy.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to want to know. I mean, generally, most of the ones that we've come across have been between $100 to $300 a year, and the property taxes are about, you know, $50 a year. So, you know, some of the properties that make sense, or it can make sense to be part of the special improvement district, pay that fee for the first year.
Yeah, nicer communities and good values on property.
But you know, we come across one where like Shade said, it's $500 a month, and that's completely ridiculous. And so you'll just want to check that out before buying the deed. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are just listing a few of the over-the-counter states here, but why don't we switch over and let me do this. Where's my sharing here? Okay, so let's go. All right, you want to start here?
Yeah, let's go ahead. And we've been changing up the over-the-counter list section. And so let's go ahead and go to the over-the-counter section, and let's at least go over quickly and review kind of some of the changes that have been made. Let's go ahead and click on over-the-counter tax deeds first. And so we've just added some additional information about each state, how they conduct their auction. You can see how many lists are available. Some We also, some will have how many properties available. So we can see here in Arkansas, there's essentially 12,000, almost 13,000 properties available on 73 different counties. From here, we can go ahead and click on the Arkansas list to download, but then we also have it below, we have the Commissioner of State's website. So we've tried to make everything as easy as possible, so you can click on that if you wanted to go to the Commissioner of State website. Michigan as well, you can see we have, tax sale info and the fast track. Those are both going to be the websites that you'll purchase over the counters in that state. And so we've tried to do that, Mississippi as well, where we have the Secretary of State's website, and put how many counties and kind of who you're going to need to go with a quick overview of how over-the-counters work within that area. But you can see all of these different areas that are available: Wisconsin, Washington, Pennsylvania, Oregon. There's so many different areas in the country to get started doing over-the-counter deeds.
Yeah. In fact, and it's going to be a good strategy there to pursue for a lot of you. I think one of the big advantages too is how cheap you can get the property for. The majority of the properties that we target when we're doing over-the-counter tax deed investing, we pick up for anywhere between $100 to most of them are probably between $100 to maybe $1,200
for the land.
Yeah, for the land, and in some cases we'll do a little bit more than that. If it's improvements that we're dealing with, then we're generally dealing with amounts closer to 10,000, 15,000. You've got to have more capital on hand in order to buy the ones with improvements and to win them, in the auction.
Yeah, with some of the over-the-counters, you can pick up these, structures between 2,000 to 5,000. But then you're also going to need to add some additional money in there for fixing the property up and any of the additional things that are needed.
Did you want to look at the liens?
Let's go check out the liens real quick, just to kind of give an overview. So we've kind of done the same thing here. You can see how many lists are available.
They've got 39,000 there in Alabama.
Yeah, and one thing about Alabama as well, we've actually got to add some more states to this list. Some states that may not have as many counties, but they have maybe 4 or 5 lists that we'll be adding. But Alabama, for example, offers tax lien certificates, but if the tax lien is over 3 years, then they'll issue you a tax deed. So, that's actually a deed opportunity as well. Arizona, Colorado has all of the different information. Florida. In addition to all of the lists that are available in Florida, you can see there's, about 266,000 tax liens available over the counter in Florida. So you can download the hard copy list for any county that doesn't have an online over the counter sale. And then we have all of the counties, if they're handled by Real Auction or Grant Street Group, that offer over the counters online. Yeah,
and just direct links to those if you want to look at some of the over the counter inventory available here. And if you haven't bought anything yet, this is a really easy way to buy something that is going to have a good level of security. It can be small, if you want. It doesn't, you basically can make investments for any amount. Let's see if they still have anything here.
You got to go on to go back.
Oh yeah, there we go. Preview items for sale here. I'm in the wrong place. It is a much easier process here. I mean, really, all we're really doing from here is going through the records. We can start off from the smallest ones here. We can see which ones are active, available here, which ones are unavailable. And I mean, they start out at such a ridiculous, $22, for that one right there. And we could probably move up here. Let's see where page 5 gets us to here. Yeah, I mean, so $150 here for some of these liens. Let's see this one right here. If you're looking for a way to get started, and here it is, we've got a piece of land. It's vacant, residential. Let's see if I can kind of
assessed value of $4,000.
Yeah, we can see. You can see the values here, and yeah, basically for $150, the lien. Now let's see if we can find what the roll up on this particular property would be if it has a roll
I
up.
might be able to go right back here and click.
Oh, on the tax year.
Yeah. Where was it? It was the 17.
Right there.
So click on that right there.
Now let's try that. We're going to click on that, and all right, so there we go. Redeem certificates, additional unpaid certificates are 3, and then yeah, here we can see the certificate history here, which is actually just like the one that we were looking at before. We can see that it has open certificates here for 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15 for about $130 a piece or so. And so, you know, if we're looking at all of them there, $300, about $500–600, you know, is about what the total roll up on it is. Not that much considering the property's still worth $4,000. You know.
Well, and you know, we'd have to do some more checking in this area, but a lot of these properties that are assessed at $4,000 or $5,000 in Florida are selling for $10,000 to $20,000.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, even in that tax certificate right there, even with the high roll up, it's not high enough that it's going to kill your investment. Chances are, if you buy that tax certificate, foreclose on it, and you know you end up paying $1,000 or $1,200 for it, it's going to sell at the sale, and you're going to make back your interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of these, you know, let's see what this one is. You know, $200. Another, again, it's another vacant lot that we can see here, and valued at about 40. What is it valued at? 4,200. You know, is the market value here on it.
And see, it was purchased for $36,000 in 2005.
Is it not going to let us zoom in here? Where is their zoom feature?
There, right there at the top.
Maybe that's as close as it goes. You know,
You can go look back on that and see.
Yeah, we
Which one do you push?
I don't know which one I clicked here either. They all look identical. Let's click on one of these just so we can see. You know, this one's similar to it. You know, vacant land worth $3,500. Certificate history, we can see here unpaid. You know, liens starting in 2010. You know, for similar there to that other one, and we can see also what Steve was talking about here. These were basically county held. You know, certificates or over the counter.
One thing I was going to mention, if you're looking at taxing, let's say we're looking at this property here, and instead of having this many, there's 3. You could buy 15, 14, or 13. If you have the ability, buy the older lien.
Yeah.
Because then you could foreclose on it immediately or within 6 months or whatever if you needed to.
Yeah, in some cases you can buy one that is past the redemption period. In other words, it's eligible to foreclose any time. So you could basically buy it, and they may make you wait for a few months because some state laws are written that way. If you basically they give the property owner a certain period of time from the time you initiate foreclosure.
Yeah, or you could buy the 2013, 14, and 15 and buy all of them, and then all you'll have to do is when you're ready, fill out the deed application because you already own all the tax liens.
Yeah, yeah. You know, these are all very easy way to basically buy liens if you are unsure or if you're trying to figure out a way to get started, and they range in all different amounts. You know, so if you're trying to invest more than that, if you're trying to invest $5,000 or $10,000, you could do that pretty quickly. I mean, we're at the $500 range here, and let's see here. Let's see what they've got. What you'll find is that a lot of the ones that are missing are going to be between a certain price range, because that's where you're going to have a lot of your like your single family homes and things that would sell at the auction. Some of your most appealing tax liens. Although when it comes to tax liens, the reality of it is they're all pretty good. That one is kind of interesting. That one.
See, I would have bought the one for $200 versus that one.
Yeah, totally. Well, the reason why is what we're looking at here is, the assessed value on the property is only like $2,200, but what's happened is the lien amount has gone up dramatically. So rather than being a $150 or $200 lien, it's a $500 or $600 lien now, and suddenly the numbers don't make sense because we're looking at a lien that represents 25% of the value. It's got a 25% bid to lien ratio, and so the number to, it doesn't make sense. We would want to keep looking because it doesn't really offer the security that we want. It probably has a ton of roll up too. I'll bet it's got a ton. In fact, we can probably look at some of these. They're probably similar. To see.
Yeah, see, it's got 7 against it.
Yeah, and they're each, $300 plus, and so you've got 2,100, and it's valued.
Essentially, what we would consider.
Toxic.
To have the roll up is more than it's worth it to.
Yeah, in fact, I'll bet that a lot of these that are right here at this exact amount, they could be very similar properties here, and many of them could have that same issue.
Sometimes you can look for a little bit newer liens. The ones you're looking at right now are pretty old ones.
Yeah, because these are
so
like
if you're looking
that.
at 13 or 14, that's been on the books for a while. So sometimes you can try to look at some of the newer liens. Is a better way to find some.
Yeah, which let's see here. Yeah, we've got a couple here that are newer. $6,000, $6,900 here.
Some of those big ones when they haven't been bought. Sometimes there's.
Yeah. This one is. Let's see. So this one, I wonder if this is the one that she was looking at. It's valued at about 155,000 here, but let's take a look.
It's a lot smaller. That one's a big one.
Oh yeah.
3 acres.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see. Let's look at the tax year here to see, and we've got 7 unpaid certificates. And
there's a building value on it.
Oh, there is. Oh yeah, the 111,000 building value.
Look at the map too.
Oh, this is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it probably is it. Maybe.
Yeah, I think this is that one that we're looking at. You can kind of see where it's located at here on this Wheeler Road. It's fairly rural, I think here. You can kind of see just how rural it is.
Oh yeah.
It's next to Lehigh Acres, which this area right here in Lehigh Acres, there's a lot of great, investing and stuff in there. It's kind of on the outskirts of that, over in a little bit more rural part of.
Yeah, that one's where
Yeah,
the numbers
look
can
at
make
that.
sense.
Those numbers. This is actually a different one because
Yeah,
those numbers are different, and you can see how some of these numbers grow. And these were investors, that purchased that. It's still open. There's still a 2009 tax lien on this property, and nobody's done anything against it.
Yeah.
They've lost their right to.
Yeah, they have.
The lien is actually expired.
Yeah. Some of those liens are going to expire after 7 years, I think.
Yeah, liens expire sometimes after a certain duration of time if you don't take some kind of action with them. And I would not be surprised at all if like this 2009 and 10 are, no longer have anything there, because they didn't do anything. But again, sometimes a lot of times the ones that do this are like financial institutions that would buy up liens like this and just kind of sit on them and wait and never really be the ones to pursue foreclosure.
Yeah.
That this first investor in 2009 should have pursued foreclosure, in 2011, and they wouldn't have had to deal with all of this.
They would have made back their money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some of these higher price ones, you've got to look into a little bit more because they are the higher price ones, so investors will look at those and there might be issues with them.
This one's valued at $143,000. It was, 4,800 is the amount there. We can see it's how much area is it? It doesn't tell us the exact acreage here. It's hard to see anyway. It doesn't tell us the square footage. Well, we could at least look here and see real quickly what the roll-up is here on it. And so what we're looking at here.
That one says 33 acres too.
Oh yeah, maybe they're all similar. And there we've got.
This one looks like the one she was looking at.
It's a different amount though. But they must have a lot of similar properties out there. And you can see that these ones are all these ones were all picked up by investors here from 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, and only 14 and 15 were county held. and none of these investors went to pursue foreclosure. That's so foolish. It could be the same investor that bought all of these and didn't pursue foreclosure, or they could have sold them to different people. You think that it's so easy to initiate the foreclosure process there that it's crazy not to do it.
Different buyer numbers.
Yeah, Florida has self-executing foreclosure, and so it basically means that the county will do most of the they'll do most of the heavy work.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me just click off a couple of these here. But yeah, if you haven't invested or bought something yet, this is a good way to get started. Is just using something like that, and you can access this through the over-the-counter tax lien section here. If you want to do that, you can also access the over-the-counter tax deed section to be able to link directly to and download some of these lists.
So go to your Michigan, like for example, if you're interested in Michigan, we could download the list, but you can also, we have the tax sale info here. You can click on, and you can see some of the surplus properties that are available in this particular. There's also the land bank. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give you guys as much information, links that can help you in purchasing over-the-counter tax liens and deeds. And so if there's additional information, new things that come up, new list, we're going to try to keep posted there and just try to make it a resource. With all of our resources, we just continue to try to make them better for you.
That's all right. It's not worth long. We're pretty much out of time anyway here. But yeah, basically an easy way to access any of these, and really to access the stuff for any of the areas here. So yeah, there is a lot of stuff here to try to simplify it. Let us know if you have questions. Say for questions, a lot of times email is going to be the best way to get a hold of us with it, because we can try to address the question here at different points or from wherever we're at.
Yeah, if you have a specific question, send us an email. If you have kind of general tax lien and deed questions, what about this, what about that, ask them in the forum. Those will come in to us, come into me, and that way we can answer them there as well.
Yeah. So, outside of that, thanks for joining us here tonight. We just wanted to take a look at a few of those things. There's tons of stuff going on right now, though. It's a good time to start getting involved and to look into some of these over-the-counter opportunities. So, plus there's a lot of sales and stuff that are coming up.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're getting into a busy time of year for that. So, it's a good time to start looking at, where you want to invest and start looking at what they have coming up.
Yeah, between our over-the-counters, our online auctions, the auction calendar, there is plenty to keep you busy if you want to get going.
Yeah, I think that is true. Well, excellent, everybody. Again, we enjoy having you with us. Oh, thank you so much, Jonathan. It's always great to have you guys with us. Really do love having everybody here join us. We love our members, and we love having you join us. We love doing anything we can to help, and so give us the chance to do that. You guys have a great night. We'll see you.
See you next week.